Welcome back to Woodworking with Wes. In today's segment, we're going to show you how to make a cheap jig to do perfect crown mold miters every time. And it's a cheap little jig that'll help you every time you do crown mold miters. To start off with our crown mold jig, we start off by nailing two pieces of wood at a right angle. Now I have a 4-inch wide piece and a 3.5-inch wide piece to make me a little right angle jig. This would be the part that we clamp to the radial arm saw to give us a square edge. If you notice, the crown mold fits in here like this, and we're going to nail on this little strip to hold it in place. And what that creates is it creates a solid tray for the crown mold to sit in while we cut. So we're going to nail that piece on right now, and we're just going to use 3/4-inch small crown staples to nail in that bottom part. And the one thing you want to make sure when you do this, if you'll notice, the crown mold has a flat edge there, and you want to make sure that those flat edges sit tight against your jig, and that your small piece of stop, we'll just call this black piece of stop, but that's what it is. You want your stop to make sure that that holds this flat and this flat, because that will give you your perfect cuts. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to nail in the stop. With our stop nailed in, we've now created a tray that is very solid. We can slide this piece of molding in, put it down there, and it holds it tight. The one thing this will also do is if your molding is a little bit out of square, you can slide it in here and push it down, and it'll square it up. Again, keeping your cuts just right for your 45s when you do your moldings. Okay, we're going to go ahead and set this up on the chop saw now and begin to make our cuts. So we're going to make a 45-degree corner and show you how this goes together. All right, we've brought our jig over to our chop saw, and what we're going to do is we're going to clamp it to our bench so that it holds it good and solid while we make our cuts. And I made these little blocks just so that my clamps work better. So now we're all set in there. We're good and tight. We're tight against the fence. We're tight against the bottom, and our chop saw can rotate. First thing we're going to do is make just a preliminary cut on our 45s. The reason that we do that is because this gives us now a line to measure to. So if I was measuring that I had a distance, I would know that this is where my blade cuts, and I could make a mark on my crown mold and set it to the edge of my cut, and that would be the measurement. Now we're going to take a preliminary cut on the end of our piece of molding and just make sure everything cuts just the way we want it to. So we slide it in here, we're square here and here. And just like that, we have a nice 45-degree cut on our molding. And you always cut your crown mold upside down. So this is the top of your crown. This is the bottom of your crown. This is an outside corner that we're cutting for our sample here. We're going to make an outside corner. One of the reasons I like to do this is because outside corners are very hard to make and keep nice and clean. In fact, when I build a kitchen, I do all my moldings in the shop if I can, because I can put them together real good and tight, nail them, sand them, and run them through the paint shop prior to installation, and I have a better corner. Now, the one thing about that is you have to make sure that you have your measurements on the job site just perfect, and have the time to leave your job site, go back to the shop, and then go back to the job site with your completed molding. But let's go ahead and cut our outside corners now so that we can make our joint. Here's our two outside cuts. Now, we'll cut this board in half and put the corners together. But I'm going to show you a little trick before we do that. When you get ready to nail your crown together, one of the things that's hard to do is to hold your crown in place while you put your nails in. So one of the things we're going to do here is we're going to create a jig using this jig, and what we're going to do is we're going to make it so this jig now helps us to nail it together. We used the jig to do the cut. Now we're going to use the jig to nail it together. Now it destroys the jig, but this is just scrap wood. I could make one of these every time for $1. It's no big deal, and we use it, we cut it up, we throw it away. Not a big deal. And you can do this jig for every different kind of molding. This is a piece of traditional crown mold or colonial crown, depending upon how you want to classify it. But you can use it for a cove crown or a flat stock crown or anything like that. All you have to do, build your tray and then put your stop in based upon the size of your molding. We're going to go ahead and cut this jig in half now. And we're going to cut the ends of this jig in a 45 to create our nailing jig. We'll cut our crown in half so we can make the corner. Okay, let's go back over to the bench and I'll show you how we put our now old jig together to make our nailing jig. Back over here at the bench, we're now going to nail together our jig that we used to cut our angles into now a jig to nail our angle together. And we cut off the ends at a 45, cut it in half, and you can see how it goes together and now makes an outside corner jig. And we're just going to tack this together with some 18 gauge nails to hold it in place. Okay, very simple, but now watch. We slide this piece in here. We put it there. We slide this angle in here. And we now have a jig that holds our miter together perfectly while we glue and nail. And so let's put some glue on it and some nails. Now we're going to nail our corner together, and I always glue my miters together, especially when I'm in the shop, so that I have a little tighter joint. We'll slide that in there. Slide this piece in here. Make sure we're lined up perfect. And our jig helps hold it in place. It's awfully hard to hold a miter and nail at the same time, but this holds it for you. It just eliminates all of the hard work of putting a miter corner together. We'll put a nail there and a nail there. We're going to put another one here. We'll be puttying this joint. Now that joint is already together solid. We're going to give it one more nail down here. And there is our outside corner molding. Very slick, very easy. Just by using some scrap plywood to make a jig, you end up with perfect miters. And we haven't even sanded this yet, but we have a perfect miter every time with a jig like this. I'm going to go ahead and putty these holes, sand it, and it'll be ready for the paint shop. We'd like to thank you for watching our video on how to make perfect miter corners with a cheap little jig for your chop saw. Again, don't forget to subscribe. We'll be showing you tricks like this from time to time. And thank you for watching Woodworking with Wes.